My name is Michael Cooperstein. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I was 15. He was 14. We were in ninth grade. It was the first day of ninth grade. It was the Abraham Joshua Heschel High School. It is on 60th and West End on the Upper West Side. It was a very small school. There were like 70 kids in our grade. 50 of them all knew each other from middle school, and some of them even from like elementary school and like preschool. The rest of the like 20, 25 people came from outside schools or out of state. Me and Emmett were in the same advisory together. We had like a little advisor, one of the teachers, and like a group of like maybe like 10, 15 students from our class. We just like vibed with our underlying queer energy, being different, not like knowing anybody, being really new. And I lived on the Upper West Side at the time. He lived in Inwood at the time on like 215th Street. And we were in the Shahar program together with like for kids who had not gone to a Jewish day school previously. So we were learning Hebrew for the first time, studying Tanakh for the first time, and Talmud.
Was it a pluralistic Jewish day school?
Yes. There were some Orthodox kids, there were some Reform kids, conservative kids, people who were Israeli, some people who were Ashkenazi. There were some Sephardic people, various observances. We could wear whatever we wanted as long as the strap had to be a hand thick. So I guess this would not fly. It was it was eye-opening for me. I had never really met an Orthodox person before I came to Heschel. I appreciated a lot more than I did before. I actually hadn't experienced Reconstructionists that much until I started going to rabbinical school, learning about all of that. When I started meeting all of those people when he was in hospice, I was like, you being part of Reconstructionist services that I had never heard before, hearing about their views. Oh, this is like a little different and kind of interesting. I was working for like $16 an hour at like a doggy daycare. So like most of my time was like already spoken for. But when I did have time to go down, I'd like, pay $20 megabus and I would sort of just stay in the room with him when like other people couldn't be there because they had other obligations. And I would be there and I would run errands for him. I would call people for him and I also be relaying messages from our high school. But I was just sort of there, just being in company and walking Roxy and like decorate the room too. It reminded me kind of a dorm room in like a freshman hall. It was very much standard, pre-made and like predetermined where everything was going to be and what it's going to look like. And then sort of just hodgepodge patched up with memorabilia from people that Emet has impacted all over the whole country. Pieces of like artwork, just like people who drew stuff and painted stuff and pictures and cards. And then we had that huge banner that said Emet and his name in Hebrew and English, and everyone like signed it. It was like a dorm room because it was very like homey and like lived in. Because he was there for like a long time, longer than most people are in hospice. I stayed there a lot of nights, but I also stayed with Rachel sometimes in the hotel like down the street too. It honestly wasn't a lot different than because I've like had sleepovers with him in the past years. It wasn't a whole lot different, really. We would just sort of stay up like talking about like, people and gossiping a lot because we just sort of like to do that until he would just eventually fall asleep. And then I would fall asleep or I would go outside, get like a quesadilla at Wawa, and then I would like come back and like fall asleep again, like watching The Office or something. So it was really just like a regular old sleepover, pretty much. Very rarely did we talk about like the morbidity of the situation, at least in my experience. The years before he decided to stop getting treatment and start undergoing hospice, we would talk about that morbidity stuff anyway. Like when he was in Philly and I was in New York, I was going through personal troubles and he was going through personal troubles. They were very different troubles, but troubles nonetheless, and still gossiping. But we would Facebook video chat and we would just talk for hours and hours and hours until he just eventually fell asleep, and then I would hang up and I would go somewhere. I would go to bed or something. So it was kind of the same. It was always like that whenever I met up with him. Like it didn't matter how long it had been since we had talked or seen each other. We always just like picked up right where we left off. We dyed his hair and we cut his hair. And we brought him makeup. and we did makeup tutorial thingies, or he would like show me how to do some things. His parents would be there and we'd be like catching up with them. They would walk out of the room and they would be there. I mean, they're going through it for real. They were also very concerned with me and what I was doing with my life too, because they're sort of second parent by proxy kind of thing for me. And a lot of times Emmett couldn't really advocate for his own care because they would like switch doctors because of shifts. And also he was there for a few months, which isn't like a normal thing in hospice. So like another doctor who would come in who had only been on his case for like a minute was like, yeah, so you're in hospice, so just do whatever you want, make yourself comfortable, eat whatever you want. It's all going to be good. If you need any meds, just let us know. Just like eat whatever you want. We were all kind of taken aback when he said that because if he had gastroparesis, he could not eat anything. He could only like eat icing, whipped cream, and drinks. He couldn't eat anything, and it would be like painful even eating that stuff. It was like tone deaf that he would even sort of say that. The people in the room who were there kind of had to stick up for Emmett and like advocate for his care and be like, you should read the case before coming in acting as if you've been on the case for 3 months. It wasn't just that people were Jewish, but they were all chronically ill because Emmett had a lot of followers on Instagram, like lots of people following his journey, and was very inspirational and was like very like with his words, it touched a lot of people. But he's also very into making friends and like, being social and like wants to be involved in the community and wants everyone to come and everyone to be involved. Anybody who felt touched by Emmett would like visit. I like met all of these people who had one way or another some kind of cross section between being queer, being Jewish, and being disabled or chronically ill. Any combination of ratios between all of those things. So like we all just like sort of had like a little bit of a common ground that way. Whether like they grew up like being Jewish or they converted to being Jewish or like they're like visibly chronically ill or like it's like sort of like a hidden thing. Or if they're observant or not, or in rabbinical school, they're a rabbi, or they're just like a person. They're all sort of like that, which was cool. A lot of those kinds of people are like privy to taking leadership naturally. And with Emmett like losing a lot of his ability to be on top of everything at every single moment in time, that you like kind of have to do when you're more or less like an independent adult who's like, in hospice. There's like opportunities for people to take charge and say like, oh, like this is what's happening, and asking Emmett what he wants and like figuring out how to make it happen, how to make events happen. We had like the living funeral and how to like get people together for services or for like nail painting or for listening to eclectically weird music. Well, also at the living funeral, if I'm not mistaken, the rabbinical students or the ones who were rabbis made him a rabbi, and it was sort of like an honorary experience. Also, because going through this sort of made Emmett sort of like a queer elder. Some of the people who weren't necessarily disabled or chronically ill became exposed to a lot more of that community. Maybe they would take that with them to their Jewish community. Everyone showed up, like everyone was there. It was almost like the room where everyone goes after services to get challah, or they just like they have the wine and they sing the hamotzi and then they just like mingle. It was centered around being Jewish and also disabled and chronically ill. Instead of having it exempt from the ADA, it was connected through being disabled and chronically ill. Because everyone was queer / gender something or other.
The second hospice center where Emet passed away, it was originally started to care for HIV/AIDS patients.
Oh, I think I knew that. It's kind of eerie, I guess, so fitting. It's around like one person. Although with them, it was more like one person at a time, and the next person, and the next person.
It was like another example of a time in which chronically ill people cared for each other.
Yeah. They didn't have anything set up structurally already.
We weren't the first young queer and trans people, to be like
caring for like a dying community member.
Yeah, there were ancestors kind of in the room.
Yeah, they were probably watching over us.
So that helped when I kind of felt like we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah. When we moved there, we really like
Did
it was
not.
really getting crazy what was happening with everything. Yeah.
Like we can figure it out together.
We did more or less. Like community. There were certainly definitely like group chats and phone trees, Facebook groups made. Sure, I probably would have maybe been in some of these groups because Judaism and queerness, like having it centered around caring for a person that doesn't necessarily have a infrastructure of care for him already set up, we like build one for him. And so we like, gain the ability to make a structure of care and communication fabricated from thin air,
Right.
like out of need.
Have you seen the show Umbrella Academy?
Yeah.
Have you seen the episode called A Wedding at the End of the World? That's what Emet was picturing. And
not
like,
necessarily like a wedding, like you think of like a wedding for like a wedding's sake, just sort of a wedding as like a way of bringing somebody together. It could have even been a bar mitzvah or something.
yeah,
you know?
like he gave us the gift of time in choosing hospice.
Yeah, for sure. I did. I mean, it's like a weird thing to say, but I did enjoy my trips down to Philly. Because also, I had never really been to Philly. So I could explore Philly with Roxy or just walk around and buy like food and stuff, meet new people and like explore the gay scene there too. And then I'd have some of the queer Jews who were in the room with me tell me about the community that exists in Philly and how it's different from New York and whatever. And I tell them about New York. It was so sad and had this like sad undertone to the whole trip, but it was also just nice to get away and also just meet these new people who I have connections with.
What skills were important for us to have?
Yeah, definitely communication and open-mindedness. You have to, if you want to make something happen for Emet, that Emet can't really do for himself. Everyone has to sort of agree on what to do. Definitely like being decisive and also being a mediator. If there's a person who could like mediate, who knows the parents and knows Emet to mediate between the two. Somebody like who is like decisive on, yes, this is a good idea. This is what Emet wants. This is what he really wants. Be able to put that into words. Somebody who's like very organized with like administrative stuff to create a phone tree and create a group me or a WhatsApp and like a Facebook group. Also creatives to execute the stuff. Somebody to cut his hair, to dye his hair, to paint the stuff, or to like organize the living funeral, like send out all the invites, make sure everybody knows when it's happening. If and that a certain amount of people can come or if it can't come to like change the date. I guess fearless, decisive person to do a lot of the advocating for a person who can't advocate for themselves. I was usually the visitor being told that, oh, there's a space for me to come or there's a need for me to come. Zusha, he told me a couple times that I could come down. Sarah also.
Sarah Barish.
Yes. She was very often talking to the doctors for Emet. Emet was just like groggy and couldn't really talk. I was also in contact with Emet's family a lot because I went to high school with Emet, so I like know his family a lot. When there wasn't a spot for me in the hospice room, like I stayed with Rachel in the hotel. It was very collective. So it was like whoever was there and was about to leave. Like also Kaden, who also lives here. I like carpooled with him, and Rachel, who was also staying here a few times, I carpooled with her.
What kind of lessons do you think we can learn about disability and chronic illness from what the kind of space that we saw in hospice?
There definitely have to be people who understand the experience of being disabled and chronically ill. I can't say that I totally understand that experience that well. I can educate myself as much as I can and have as much understanding as I can try to have in like the collective of people in the community of care. Like there have to be people who are that, who can relate. And some people are born chronically ill, some people are not. Emmett was not really like that until after he graduated college, or sort of during college-ish. But I think maybe when people in your community start to need that care, sort of pay attention a little bit more, communicate more.
A lot of people in these interviews have been saying Emmett taught them like how to ask for help.
Yeah. Emmett was very much not shy about asking for people to help him, or at least not even just to help, at least to just like come and see him. Like before, when you decide to go into hospice care, and I mean, I guess that might change a person and their perspective on like their attitude of, oh, like should I be quiet about my needs, my wants, or should I speak up about it? Yeah, I mean, actually, a lot of the stuff that I did, a lot of other people did, they probably had never done before. We were also, a lot of us were pretty young, like more or less, and had never experienced this kind of thing before. So stepping up to the plate and really like showing up for a person when they so graciously tell you how to do it is like a gift, actually. He very much gained like queer elder status, even though he was one of the youngest ones. I haven't really thought about what happened in depth in like a while. It's been like 4 years. Yeah.
Time went by fast, I think, because of the pandemic. Like,
Yeah.
he died almost a year before the pandemic.
Yeah. Almost even less. It feels 10 years ago when I like you spent those days and weekend every other weekend in Philly. It feels like a decade ago.
Because it belongs to the before time.
Yeah. And my life is so different. He knew some more gossip about our high school friends than I did. And also another one of our friends from high school was going to med school at Drexel,
Right.
Oren. And he came and he knew nothing about the gossip. He was out in the world and not in a hospice room. Like Emet knew like all of the gossip from everybody.
I think it's because everyone came to him and told him.
Yeah, and gave him the scoop. It was horrible, but it was kind of like a fun. It was like an era of our friendship. I was friends with him for 10 years. That was an era, the hospice era. I've been thinking about it for a while now. It was somber and beautiful. Like so sad and devastating, but so fun. I mean, I bring him up whenever I can. Oh, I know this. My best friend from high school, he was a rabbi. Like he was totally like a queer elder. He brought like, all these like people together to know each other from all over the place. I like used to go to Philly like all the time. They're like, have you ever been to Philly? I'm like, yeah, I've totally been to Philly. Like I used to go there every other weekend. Stay in a hospice center. It was so fun. They're like, fun.
No, it was though.
It was.
It was a place of hospitality, and like who knew that the person who was dying could be the host?
Yeah.
And he offered us hospitality. I think it's because he knew like that was maybe like the last thing that he could give us.
I think he always liked to do that though too.
Right.
When he would have like his like birthday hangs, or he would just buy all the food and he would make everyone come and be like, you can come whenever you want. We're just gonna be here doing nothing, just eating pizza, like ice cream. Even when he can't eat, whenever we were together, we're like best friends. We were always just like very close till the end. Yeah.
That's a very long time ago, over a decade ago. It was a very dark time in my life, and just hearing you share about the things that you've already gone through, even though we were so young, it was very inspiring, and even forward, like we were only 14, so continuing on, watching you deal with every single thing that came your way, like no matter what obstacle you faced, you just carried on with poise and grace and dignity, and you just fearlessly just like dove into life, and I'm very jealous of that, because I'm filled with fear whenever I look into the future. And I'm always going to remember our friendship. And even though we weren't always very close, like every single one of the 11 years, 10 years we've known each other, like every time we reconnect, it's like we just came back to school like from the day before. Like it was like no time had passed. And I know I'll never have a friend like that ever again. So thank you for that.